For years, I've been getting this question whenever I do my workshops, which is, what do you do if you don't like your student? Well, let me just tell you, there's a lot you can do. And in today's video, I will be sharing some strategies and some tips on what to do when you're just not feeling your student. Stay tuned. Hi, everybody. Michelle Holiday here. I'm a behavior strategist, and I help teachers, schools, districts, and organizations manage their students with less stress and less struggle. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about what you can do if you just don't like your student. Now, let me just get some truth out there. Very rarely, depending on how many years you've been teaching, will you walk away from a teaching career loving every single student. I know I haven't. But also recognize there are seasons where you may not like a certain student, and by the time the year is over, you are actually loving that student. This happens, it's not uncommon, so you're not alone. But let me just say, just because you don't like your student doesn't mean that you can't be an effective teacher for that student. First of all, respect their right to be educated. Even though you don't like that student, they still have the right to be educated, and frankly, to be educated by you. And I know there's some parents out there who are already upset because it's like, if you don't like my child, then you can't educate my student. And that is not true. Really, it's about if you cannot respect that student, then it's really difficult to educate that student. If you can't appreciate their right to be educated, it's also challenging to educate that student. Start with the mindset of, even though I don't like this student, they have a right to be educated, and I am able and I have the ability to do it. Strategy number 2 is to dig for their strengths and focus on those. So I actually have had a number of students that I was not feeling, that I was having a problem with. Some of them I grew to love and some of them not. So what I had to do though, is because they're in my classroom every day, and often I will tell you this, students like these are in your classroom every day. They don't get sick. They don't go on vacation. They're in your classroom every day. Right? So what you have to do is dig for their strengths. What do I mean? Start to take some observations about what they do well. So even if it's a student who never does their work, sometimes these students are leaders. Sometimes these students are creatives. Sometimes these students have other skills or character strengths that you can actually appreciate and focus on those. So when the student walks into the classroom, instead of saying, oh, here he comes, or here she is, start to say, okay, I recognize this student is a leader. So what can I do to tap into that? Or I recognize the student has a lot of creativity. So what can I do to reinforce or bring that out? So really start to say, what is the strength? Even if it's one strength, even if it's half a strength, dig for their strengths and focus on that when you see the student and when you interact with the student. And this will help oftentimes gloss over some of your bad feelings. Strategy number 3, bite the bullets and act as if. So, as I said before, depending on how many years you've been teaching, I know I've been teaching for many years, there will be students that you just don't like. So what you have to do is what we call put on your big girl underwear, your big guy underwear, bite the bullet and say, okay, I'm a professional and I can meet the needs of this student. Strategy number 4 is try to build a relationship with the student. I can remember this one student this was a student who was always getting in trouble out in the communities. So when he would come to school, he had a chip on his shoulder, he had an attitude, he didn't want to be there, and he wanted me and everyone else he knew to know, I don't want to be here. And it was really challenging to like this student with the attitude and with the unwillingness to want to do anything. So what I chose to do is to try to build some type of relationship with the student. One of the things I did is included him in our classroom games. I'm a big believer in using games to build relationships with students because this way they get to see you outside of the academic teacher role and they see you more as a person who makes jokes, who laughs, who can enjoy different things that games bring. This student, even though he had the attitude, I would invite him to play the games with us. And so he would come, he would actually sit there, he would have an attitude, he would have the mean face on, but he would show up to the table where we would play the games. And let me just be real with you, he cheated a lot. And there were times I had to pause the game due to the cheating. But I will say I got to know his personality. I got to see his sense of humor, and he began to talk about things that interested him. So through the games, we were able to build a relationship. And over time, I actually began to like this student. The student began to like me, or at least respect me. And he actually began to improve in his classwork and his behavior. And this was all because I tried to build a relationship. And when I say I tried to build it, I did not go in with any preconceived notions or expectations. I just said, well, let me try some things that I use with my other students to see if I can engage the student. I may not enjoy it, but at least I can learn something from it. And from that experience, I began to have a different point of view of the student. Let's look at the takeaways from this. If you have a student that you really don't like and you can't get them out of their classroom, respect the fact that they need to be educated, and you're the one who's been given the responsibility to educate them, so it's up to you. Number two, dig for their strengths. Try to find out what they're good at, what they're strong at. It does not have to be academic related, but once you find that strength or those strengths, begin to focus on that when you think of and interact with the student. Strategy number three, bite the bullet and teach. It's a part of the job. This is what we have to do. And so not everything, as you know, is pleasant, but you can do it. And strategy number four, try to build a relationship, because you know what? You never know what will happen from it. Does this work with every single student? Absolutely not. There are students I tried to build a relationship and it just didn't gel. But at the end of the day, I can say I taught the student at least as much as he or she would let me. What have you tried when it comes to educating a student you just don't like? Feel free to share that in your comments below, and I will see you in our next video.